It's really, truly lovely to be here with you. And for those of you that are new to join a Death Cafe, I want to share you a little bit about the history of Death Cafe. And this is an unusual Death Cafe. Death Cafes, sweetly, are happening all over the world. In Death Cafes, usually people meet in a cafe or a home or a place, and people gather to talk about their feelings, their heart, their inquiries, their questions, and together in community, we hear each other. As you probably know and experience, death is not talked about a lot in people's homes. There's a lot of conversations in the community about death, but do we really talk to our loved ones about our fears? Do we talk to our loved ones about how we want to die? Do we talk about our loved ones, how we want to be buried? I'm not so sure that's part of our everyday conversations. So the cafe is a safe place to have those conversations. That's the intention of it. And usually we meet and people have these discussions. All topics are welcomed, from dying to end-of-life rites to burial to afterlife. I've had the honor of facilitating these for over 8 years, and once a month, and not one cafe has ever had the same conversation in it. This is usually the night that we meet in Nevada City, and because of all our restrictions and our safety, we're not meeting. So I thought I'd take it live. It's a bit of a different format than the regular Death Cafe because I won't be able to see you, but I am very much hoping you might dial in some questions or concerns or expressions, and I will share them and have a little conversation around that. And I hope that helps. Before we go any farther, I also really want to talk about this moment now for all of us all over the world. How can this virus that is touching so many lives across the world and threatening our lives not affect us, not bring up our concerns and fears about death and end of life, and questions and curiosities? I don't think that's possible. We've built up a pretty good defense system around this topic, and that partly allows us to live, but death really inspires our lives. Think about it. If we weren't going to die, what would inspire our life? It's a motivation. It's also part of everyday life. It's part of nature, as you all know. We watch the seasons roll in and out. We watch life vibrant, and then we watch it die, and then rebirth into something else and something new. It's really woven into the tapestry of our being. In Western cultures, a little different than Eastern cultures, we really have built up that beautiful denial system, and it's not part of our existence. It's usually something to be feared, sadly. In fact, if I can be transparent, that's actually what inspired me in this work was my fear of death. When I was a little girl, I was very, very, very afraid of death. Many family members were dying all around me, and I wasn't invited in to participate in their illness. I couldn't go to the hospital. I couldn't go to the memorials or funerals. And it got very dark and scary because I couldn't see it. And as a little girl, my imagination said, well, if I'm not allowed to see this or witness it, it must be horrific. So I really grew up with that fear until I was in my 20s, and I got courageous enough to try and overcome my fear and anxiety. But it influenced my life. I did so many things to try and not get hurt and not get wounded or not die. I thought I can prevent it. Silly me. I started volunteering at a hospice, and my first patient died in my arms. And that's truly what changed my life. It wasn't the way I imagined it. It wasn't scary. Yeah, it was messy, and there was pain, and there was suffering. But there was a whole lot of something else that I've tried to find the words for and probably can't. But there was a lot of peace, and there was a lot of love, and there was a lot of intimacy. and something else beyond words. So that changed my trajectory of my life, and I began dedicating myself to know more, to learn more, and to serve, and to see how I could work through my fears to live as fully as I can. And with my first client, a lot of my fears went with her. A lot of my fears went with her. And there are times where I am still afraid of death. There's so many fears and unknowns. But I believe with every cell in my body, the more we become comfortable with it, the more present that we are. So I want to hear from you now. I want to hear what your thoughts are, what your questions are, what you're noticing right now, going through this horrendous scare that we're all being faced. Maybe you've already known somebody that has died from this virus. It touches us all so deeply. And yet, there's something that emerges from that. You know, the ashes rises, the phoenix rises through the ashes. It's the alchemy of life. Through our suffering, through our struggles, is truly where we get birthed, where we grow, where we deepen, and where we heal. So I'd like to spend a little time kind of discovering that for ourselves and see where you are. So let me take a peek and answer one of the questions here. Here's the question. I want to say the question and then I'll speak to it. And if you have a comment, please, oops, excuse me. I have the questions coming in on my phone so that I can be as present as I can. Here's a question, Prasanam Gray. I'm having a hard time dealing with my fears of my family dying of the virus. I'm afraid of having to choose between my life and being there with them as they pass. Ooh, that's a very beautiful, powerful question. And I'm going to guess most of us are dealing with that right now in our lives. Choosing from being with loved ones to support them and our own health. I think that's one of the most difficult spaces in our life when we have to choose. One of the things that this virus is doing, I feel, is besides touching everybody's life, our focus is changing a little bit from I or me to we. This is affecting the whole world, and the first time in our life that we have a common source that we're all fighting against to survive and thrive in. So sometimes there's creative answers to not choosing this or that, but being creative and creating the we. You all have read over and over again, and I hope you continue to read all the things we can do to protect ourselves. We're talking about social distancing. I'd like to reframe that to physical distancing because we can do so many social things. I want to share a creative story that I saw on social media that really touched me and helped exactly deal with this place of choice that we have to make between self and others. It was a story about a beautiful woman whose mother was in a nursing home, is in a nursing home, and the nursing homes in our state at least are on lockdown, and I hope in every state, because our beautiful elders are so vulnerable to this virus. And she was so upset. In fact, I wrote a post and I responded to her about not being able to see her mom and how scary that was for her mom and herself. So she got really creative, and I encouraged her to go to the nursing home, to go to her mom's window, to get on the phone, have somebody help her, a nurse, or a video chat, hold up art, hold up love notes, and connect with her mom. And she did. And she's been doing that every day. And it's just filling her heart with so much love. And I would have no doubt her mom's as well. So see, we can connect. And sometimes it might not be such a black and white, them or us. We can find ways of creating. My daughter is in Southern California and I can't see her. So I'm finding ways of connecting with her through sending her memes and FaceTiming and a love package, things of that nature to feel connected. And then just to go to one step deeper on this is sometimes we have to make that choice and put ourselves at risk to love another. That's only something you can decide when that moment feels right. But I will say the most important thing and what matters most in life and death is love, is feeling love, is giving love, and is being touched by love. So if our loved ones are far away, feeling that sensation of love is the best healing salve that we have in this life. That's been my experience in over 35 years of supporting people at the end of life. It really is a feeling of love, and we can express that in so many ways. I hope that was helpful. Got another question here from Susan from Minnesota. Hi from Minnesota. So much love. My question is, what can I do to comfort a friend who is in lockdown at the hospital with complications from her second round of chemo? Oh, my heart goes out to her. It's a scary place right now to be in the hospitals. Normally, it's a scary place, and on top of it, with the fears. So there are so many ways that we can comfort. I used the word creativity before, and that's truly where we want to check in, is our creativity. So there are several tools, and I'll share a few of them, and you probably have many of your own as well. But we know from a neuroscience standpoint that there are activities and processes that we can do to shift our brain, to shift our neurons, to shift the pathway that goes through, to bring us into a space of lightness and joy and happiness. Can you guess what some of those are? One of them is singing. And if you get a chance to go to my wall, I posted a sweet little song with my beloved that is a beautiful song now about, I may sing it at the end if you'll join me, about ourselves being happy and well. And it really plays with the brain chemistry and gives us that feeling and supports our immune system to heal and sure puts a happy smile on our face. The other thing we can do for people that are hurting and suffering is laughter. Is sharing laughter with them. There's a couple other tools that I use personally all the time, and one of them is Yoga Nidra. And in fact, a week from Thursday at 2 p.m., I'll be doing a global Facebook Live Yoga Nidra Graceful Transition. And tomorrow at 2 o'clock, Dr. Mark Halpern, my beloved, will be doing a Yoga Nidra live too. So you can join that and have others join that. And it's a beautiful way to start to transcend our fears. Yoga Nidra is a deep state of relaxation that helps us move the energy through our body and unhook blockages physically, emotionally, and spiritually. I always come out of a Yoga Nidra session feeling shifted. My monkey mind sometimes is always calmer. I can feel the cells calm in my body. My blood pressure is calmer. And I wake up with so much, you're not sleeping in Yoga Nidra. I come out of Yoga Nidra really feeling fresh and anew with a different perspective. So that's a gentle tool that everybody can do. All you have to be is in a relaxed position. So I find that very accessible. And one last thing, because I get this question all the time about how do I support a loved one that's hurting or dying or has lost someone. First thing that comes up is our fear. We're afraid to say something, right? That might hurt them. And that's probably the scariest part. And then what do we say? And after all these years, sometimes I'm absolutely lost for words. But what helps me is I acknowledge that first. And I usually say something like, I don't have any words right now, but I just want you to know I love you, or I'm loving you. If we weren't physically distancing, I'd say give a hug. But for now, it's a heart hug here. And letting people know you see them. See, what gets birthed right now also is compassion. Compassion just blooms right now. Because compassion heals the giver and the receiver. And isn't that all what we really want? We're connecting compassion in that place of vulnerability in each of us. And when we're willing to take that risk of being vulnerable, we're seen. And other people will wrap their arms around you virtually with love and compassion. And I believe that is the most important aspect of our healing. You think of a time in your life where someone just reached out and touched you somehow. What a difference that made in your heart, in your perspective, and how you feel things. Thank you so much. These questions are just beautiful. And I hope these answers are not so much answers, but sharing with you is really helpful. I got another question from Rick and Amara. Amara is noticing feelings of sadness and anxiety, heaviness, and constriction around loved ones. That is also such a natural response to what's happening here. The world is grieving right now, right? We're grieving so many things. We're grieving the loss of the life we once had, right? We're grieving loved ones that are sick. We're grieving loved ones that have died. We're grieving toilet paper. We're grieving things that have made our life comfortable, and we've been thrown in the discomfort. We will rise, and that discomfort will teach us. But there's a loss, a huge sense of loss that has to be grieved. If we don't grieve it, it goes within. And then it turns into spaces and places in our body that create dis-ease. It's a part of our brain that can't do denial. There's a part that can, but there's a part that does denial. And that place will internalize and create turmoil within our mind, body, and spirit. So it's important to grieve. It's important to acknowledge, I miss this, or I miss them, or I'm scared, or I'm frustrated. I don't know what to do. I'm afraid the whole world's going to blow up and be gone. Those are real and rational feelings because we're being faced with a huge, huge threat right now. And it's normal. So some tools for that is to do just what you're doing. And I really, really appreciate that question is sharing, whether it's with a counselor, whether it's loved one. There's a lot of beautiful internet support right now. You can connect with a counselor. You can do some of the tools that I provided with you a little earlier, yoga nidra, chanting, singing. I didn't say dancing. Dancing is a beautiful way to start shifting things. But sharing and not holding those emotions in are real critical. One of my favorite tools, besides the ones I've shared with you, is I write love letters. When I'm scared, I write love letters to the people I love. Or when I'm feeling overwhelmed with emotions, I write love letters to let the souls that are by my side closely know how I feel, what's on my mind, and I always want to share how I love them. So the act of writing these love letters is healing in itself. Reading our own words back give us another perspective and vantage point of what we're experiencing. And thirdly, if we choose to share them, which we don't, we're being witnessed. Just yesterday, I shared a story with someone, a very personal story with someone that I'll be presenting on Friday night in a satsang. And it was very personal. And I wept while I read it to her, which I made during my presentation. And it was beautiful to be witnessed. I read it again today and kind of integrating it. I didn't have those emotions because there's a real big difference when we're being witnessed, we're being seen, and that's another form of love. So if you're worried about what to say to someone, it's okay. And if you're grieving, it's also okay. One of the things I'm always called to say is there is no magic potion, lotion, or tool that makes us not feel. The traditions in yoga and meditation and psychology are all beautiful skills and tools to help us understand and deepen and strive towards our inner peace and our true nature. But they're not there not to make us not feel. What they do is help us attach in a different way, help us witness. It's one of the things Yoga Nidra does so beautifully, helps us witness our experience. And when we're witnessing it, we're not being carried away with the drama. We're just witnessing and observing, and then it becomes a wise teacher. We get to witness, oh, I'm grieving here, and I'm crying, and I'm sad. But the witness is peaceful. The witness is watching. And that's more about the layers of our being. It really does make a difference, these tools, in strengthening our witness and strengthening our ability to feel. But truly, if you have an understanding all these things are make us not feel, that's just not going to happen. But it's going to make us feel and utilize those feelings to empower us in our life. It's probably why I say death inspires life. Those feelings help us to generate, our true nature and live fully, because that's what we're here for, to live and to love. Okay, let me get another question. I hope these responses are supportive to you, and please let me know. Okay, here's another question. My husband just passed away last December. He had been sick for a very long time, and when he realized that he was not going to get better, we had a frank discussion about his end-of-life wishes, and the doctor seemed surprised when I said to them, do not try to resuscitate him, let him go. And then waiting immediately got in touch with organ donor foundations and then donated his body to science. My husband made it very easy for us to do, but we knew what he knew he wanted us to do. I appreciate that sharing and so much, and the courage that you and your husband had to really face head on this experience of honoring death. This has also been my experience over the years, Kathy, that when we face death and we share and we communicate with our loved ones what our wishes are, we engage in our life more. And there is a beauty in supporting our loved ones at the end of life. We're holding them. We're carrying them through. We're companioning them through the threshold. And it is absolutely one of the sweetest forms of love. People ask me, how could you do this work for so long? And I usually answer, well, I cannot not do this work, but I find it one of the most intimate experiences of our life. And it sounds like you gave Frank what he was really hoping for. And your comment about the doctor's job is to save lives. So it is very, very hard for them. I love working with doctors, often to face the reality at the end of life because they've been trained at all costs to save life. And sometimes there's a quality of life issue. Sometimes we're going to say, this is not worth living for, and that's okay. When we share those wishes with our loved ones, we have an opportunity to walk together. So thank you for sharing that, Kathy. I really am grateful for that. And I see that you wrote that you were grateful that you were given the gift of not having to make the decisions on your own. And that is one of the burdens that we carry when we don't have that discussion with our loved ones. Last year, my mom and sister died within 3 weeks of each other. It was a very, very challenging time for me, as you can imagine, trying to care for both of them. But what I want to share is they were two different experiences. My sister was 49 and she died of end-stage breast cancer with metastases to the brain. And she lost her cognitive functioning, so she had to be cared for 100%. And I was the durable power of attorney for healthcare. So I was the one making all the decisions. Now, the interesting thing is, I did try, I promise you, after trying to have discussions with her about her end-of-life wishes, she couldn't go there. She couldn't share with me what her wishes were. I did learn through one of our conversations that she wanted to be cremated and not buried, but there was no will, there was no instructions. So I had to reach into my heart, which I did, and known her all my life, and care for her the way that I would feel she would want to care for. And that got challenged. She was starting radiation. She ended up having a lot of brain metastases, as I said. So many, they couldn't even count them. And the oncologists wanted to do full brain radiation. For me, that was hard. I wouldn't want that, by the way. If any of you are around to support me, please. But I knew my sister would want that. It wasn't what I would have wanted, but I knew she would have wanted that. So I went ahead with it. And after 3 treatments, she started to decline. So I felt very good about stopping them, because it would not have been in my heart a graceful end of life. And she wouldn't have time to go home and be loved and be around her 2 young kids. So that was extremely difficult to figure out how to love her and care for her. Actually, loving her was really easy, but making sure, to my best of my ability, I was caring for her the way she wished. So I had to guess and reach in my heart. And I'm comfortable with my choices, but it would have been so much more sweet if I knew. So fast forwarding just a few weeks, actually 2 days after she died, I got a call that my mom was in the hospital with congestive heart failure. So I flew down to Southern California. My sister was up in Northern California near me. And my mom and I have had these discussions, and she was ready. And I knew what her wishes were. And you might appreciate this. We were in the hospital, and the palliative care team came in, and my mom was lying in bed and said to the doctors, "It's okay. You can let me go. I'm ready. I've had a good life. My children are in peace, and I'm ready. I'm tired. And you did a great job, and you don't have to feel bad. It's time." I was elated at her courage. The doctors were wide-eyed and also very, very appreciative of her candidness. They did try and say, well, you could do this or you could do that, but she was ready to let it go. So from that experience and many, this is one of the reasons why I facilitated Death Café, just to have the conversations, to open it up so people can have these discussions so they're not placed in difficult situations. It also complicates grief when you didn't get a chance to know what someone's wishes were. And sometimes there's guilt, sometimes there's shame, sometimes there's the woulda couldas. So this is part of what we have the grace of doing in the HeartWay, is having these conversations with families as early as we can, so that everybody has a connection and understanding. And then there's more room for just pure love with each other. Thank you. These questions are beautiful. Let me check on another one if you don't mind. Someone was sharing, and I really appreciate that. And I do this also, sharing that for them, that working with their hands help them process their sadness, like knitting, clay, crochet, growing seeds, planting, anything really in that nature. And that is so true. I'm a knitter. And it's actually a form of meditation. And I don't think I mentioned meditation earlier. That is for sure another path to process our inner experience and go deeper. But yes, movement. I also am reading a lot of people are cooking and baking on the internet right now with all the stress. One of the things that cooking does is you're feeding yourself. And when you use your hands to cook, the hands are one of the elements that share love. So we're putting love in what we're making, and we're ingesting that love inside of us. So these are all really, really great suggestions of ways of supporting ourselves during hard times. Any other thoughts on things that what are you noticing about yourself right now as your fears are coming up, curiosities, and have you found some special tools and support that we haven't shared? I'd love to hear those if some of those come up. Let me see if I have another question here. This is a question that kind of aligns with one of the questions earlier, one of the comments earlier. Is it selfish to not have the energy to support someone else when we're grieving or struggling as well? It's a huge question that I think weighs on a lot of us. So that word selfish is a word that we've processed in a way that I think makes so many of us guilty when we do things to support ourselves. We can't love and support another until we love and support ourselves. If we're not in a space to be present for someone, we can't truly support them. There's ways of acknowledging and sharing with them, I'm in a tough place right now, and I can't be present for you. I love you, and I wish you all that I can at this moment. I need some time to take care of me so that I can be present. That's okay. And that's okay. I'm developing an end-of-life practitioner training program. That's one of the first modules is really taking a look at ourselves and why we're in this work and how we're taking care of ourselves. Because I don't think we truly can be present for another and hold sacred space until we learn how to hold that sacred space for yourself. And some of these tools that we've talked about on this evening that bring us into ourself and an understanding of our inner world and our true nature and where we need to heal, where we need to grow, where we need to reach out, will allow us to be fully present for others. But we have to be fully present for ourselves first and find those tools and resources and people and loves to help you in that path. We're all human. We're all vulnerable. We all make mistakes. We're real. We're not an image that get portrayed out. And being connected to that and accepting and honoring that will allow us to accept and honor in others. And also is a big reflection on reducing our judgment. We can admit and honor where we are and where we're going. Isn't that just another form of love? Yeah. Thank you. Let's see. So here's a comment. My husband once told me he could handle anything except seeing me cry. So I was not able to cry for more than a month after he passed away because I felt like I would be letting him down. I finally found that crying helped me get my pain out and that he wouldn't want me to hold it in. Lovely. Yeah. Isn't that connected to something I shared a little earlier, that the hardest thing in our lives is to watch someone we love suffering? So I really read what your husband said to you as a form of loving you, because it was hard for him to watch you, his love, suffer. And we all suffer. And until we honor that, it's going to be really hard to heal. I have a lovely Ram Dass quote I'd like to share with you, if I might. It feels very appropriate here. Rather than closing ourselves to fear, we learn to open to it, to sit with it, allowing it to arise and pass in its own time. That's honoring our suffering, allowing it to rise, because it will pass. It will pass. I remember a wise soul saying to me a long time ago, when we have an emotion, it lasts maybe 2 minutes, maybe. Sometimes we're afraid it'll last forever. And then another emotion comes in, like the ocean, right? And I always remember that it's going to move. Something else may come up. I still need to learn and heal from that. But I'm going to be able to move and follow the ocean of my emotions. But if I shut that down, I'm not going to be able to fully be alive. I'm not going to be able to heal if I don't honor that suffering. I grew up in a house too with a don't talk, don't feel. So it took me a long time, and that bottled up inside me created a lot of anxiety until I was able to do the healing work and open me up. So thank you for sharing that. Here's another comment. You have worked with dying people. Touch must be irreplaceable at that moment of dying. Do video call can replace holding my dad's hand as he gives his last breath? Thank you for that, sharing that. It touches my heart. Touch is incredible. And I don't know about you, but I really feel suffering from not being able to touch. I was at a new client not too long ago. I did everything appropriate, but I couldn't touch, and they really noticed my pain with that. So touch is extremely healing. We're not in a space where we can touch safely right now. Is it the same? I don't think so. But does it have healing ability? Absolutely. I think touch is beautiful, but we can touch in other ways. We can touch with our words. We can touch with our heart. What we actually did is they also wanted to hug. We're huggers and couldn't. So we placed our arms across our chest and just spend a moment looking in each other's eyes and transmitting our love. It's not the same, but as your father is taking his last breaths, hearing your voice, hearing is the last sense to leave us at the end of life. Sometimes we can't respond at the end of life because we've shifted into a different level of consciousness, but we'll hear, and that's been demonstrated over and over and over again. So for your father to hear your love, to hear your dedication, to hear who he was and will be in your life, will for sure be healing, and he'll hear that and feel that love. And again, I can't think of anything more sacred than that, is being part of love. We're having to be creative right now, bless our hearts. This will allow us to be safe. This will allow us to heal over these next few weeks. So we're being challenged in so many ways. And in some ways, this is harder than we can imagine. In other ways, you can see new things percolating. You can see rebirthings in new ways. This is my first Death Cafe live, and I'm really feeling a sweetness with it. And I'm really missing not being in circle with you. but even to hear your questions and comments bring a warmth to my heart. I sure hope you feel my warmth to you and your hearts. So thank you. And my heart prayer go out to your father for a peaceful transition, and I will hold him in my heart and light a candle for his transition tonight. Let me see other questions. Thank you. Okay, let me pull up another question. This is a beautiful question. It's the question, can grief change over time? And I would say, does grief change over time? And the answer is yes. It changes faces and shapes and sensations. Grief never goes away, never leaves us, but it transforms. There's a beautiful expression that I love, and it states, time and tears heal. Not just time and not just tears. We need both to heal. After my beloveds died last year, I had lots of tears, and I needed time to even begin my healing process, because it was months of being overwhelmed with the process and practicality of caring for my loved ones before, during, and after death. It wasn't until earlier this year that I started to feel my grief and started to feel the undertow of these emotions. I couldn't feel myself. I was sad, so very sad. I didn't have a lot of words, but I felt like I was underwater and I couldn't quite find me. I was evolving and doing my process of growth. But grief changes. Now today, sitting in front of you, I still weep. I still miss them, carry them in my heart and talk to them all the time. But I don't feel as much of the weight of grief that is in every breath that I take. And I have some new places within my heart. Gratitude. More gratitude is coming back, and more lightness is coming back. I don't know if I want the grief to go away, because it's also a form of love, grief. It demonstrates how we love and how deep we love. Some people will say, well, you're going to grieve for 2 or 3 years. And I just don't think there's an end point, but there's transformation and wisdom and growth and depth and a wellspring of love that blossoms from this process of grieving for us all. And it is so painful because it's a complex of emotions, like sadness and happiness. It's got a complex of sadness and anger and shame and guilt and fear. And it takes a lot of time to distill and to learn and grow from. But people might say, well, this love is painful. It is, but I would rather love than not love. So be patient with yourself if you're in this process of grief. Use some of the sweet tools that we shared tonight. Reach out and honor yourself. We don't have a cultural platform to grieve either, and that makes it hard. I can hear insensitive comments. Aren't you over that now? That was last year. No, we're not. So that works against us as well. But it is real, and it is a timeless state. And blossoming from that is a whole bunch of love and depth. Let's see if we're getting close. See if we have time for 1 or 2 more comments. Thank you so much for sharing. This is very sweet. Oh, another one of my favorite questions. My thoughts on life after life. I remember doing a radio show one year, and it was a really sweet interviewer down in Southern California. And he said, I've been dying to ask you this question. I already know I'm set up by the way he asked it. And I want to know we're all waiting to know, all the listeners are waiting to know what happens after we die. I was on radio, right? And we're not on radio, so I get to do this. I responded by saying, and then I used my words. I said, I don't know. And nobody really knows. I haven't had that phase of my life of dying yet. I've witnessed a lot of death, yes, and studied a lot of cultures all over the world, their beliefs about death, dying, and beyond. But I will share what I personally think right now, based on my experience and my own heart. We have an image in Western culture. I'm generalizing, so I realize that's dangerous because there's a whole spectrum here. But we have this impression that death is bad, and what comes afterwards may be worse than all this. Why do we assume that it's worse than all this? We're having a pretty tough time right now in this life, but we really don't know. And many Eastern cultures believe in afterlives, believe in rebirth, believe in nirvana, are striving for samadhi, and that is just gracefully leaving the body into a new realm to be reborn into something else. So personally, I believe there's something. I don't think I can tell you what that is, but I believe we're about energy, and that energy transforms. I don't think I'll know me as me. I think it'll be a state of consciousness that is more connected to our unconscious, the place of dreams. And I can't put words in it, but I believe something will get transformed in rebirth. But I have a lot of fun trying to imagine what that is, and I encourage you to spend some time imagining what you think happens after life. But I do not think it's worse than this life. How do I know that? Because of the hundreds that I've held at the end of life, they're peaceful. They're not in fear at the very end of life. All these years, maybe one or two, but it was because about this life and what happened in their life. But as they die and after their death, they look so peaceful. All the wrinkles go away. There's a radiance after death. And nothing leaves me to believe that it's scary or something else. So I just wanted to share that with you for whatever it's worth. And I encourage you more to do your exploration. Do more of your exploration on what do you think? What do you feel? What have you learned from the traditions that you have studied? That's an important place for us to go in stepping into our fear. And the last question that I'm going to take is directly connected to that. You know, I have to tell you, it's my first time doing a Facebook Live, and I see all these hearts flowing up. It's really beautiful. Thank you. So the last question, because we're at our time, is how do I overcome fear of death? And I think tonight was all about that. Was about these conversations. Was about some of the tools. Was about sharing. Is about exploring, and practicing what you can do to love yourselves in this process. We signed a contract when we were born, and that was that we were going to die. But we're surprised because we forgot in the middle. The Tibetans practice every day death, dying, so that when it shows up, they're ready to embrace it. And part of that practice is a repetition of the practice, and then we get more comfortable with it. You know, it's the ego mind that fears because it doesn't want to lose itself. But there's a whole lot of layers of incredible us that live on in many traditions. The soul lives on, and the soul isn't afraid of death. Just that I place is. So reach out in your practices. Please know we're here for you. You can reach in and touch in with me, and I support in any way that I can. I want to close with a little reading, if I might. And it comes from this book, Graceful Passages, and I highly recommend this. They're beautiful little vignettes from magical people like Ram Dass and Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, from every tradition, and there's 2 musical CDs. I often read these stories and play the music to my clients, and it brings great comfort. And a lot of that is about contemplating. Okay? The past is the past. We don't know where the future is going to go. It's really about being here now. Be here now. Don't anticipate. Don't yearn for things of the past. Let the past go with forgiveness, and let the future go with no anticipation. Each of us contains a being that doesn't die and a being that dies. Everything must change except the soul. Your preparation for dying is done by identifying with your soul, not your ego. Identify with your soul, your heart, your dreams. There are realms other than the one we are meeting on right now. Planes where we are the souls that we have known in the past as just souls, not bodies. We won't meet them in their clothing of mother or father or uncle or aunt. Then, sensational planes, planes with color, planes with music, planes which have no form. This plane is where all of it starts. This plane is the womb, the beginning of things. This plane is ecstatic. It is ultimate creativity. Dying is the most important moment that exists in any incarnation. It is important that you not be overwhelmed by the process of dying. I wish you a process of dying that doesn't overwhelm you. I wish you a moment of dying that cannot be conscious of. I wish you a future incarnation in a plane of incredible light. And that was written by our beloved Ram Dass. Bless his heart, as he's in one of those ecstatic planes now. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Please take good, loving care. Be kind, be forgiving, be compassionate, and share all that love with others. With love from my heart to yours. Thank you.